So, really very pleased to welcome everyone on today's webinar, Ocean Equity in Southeast Asia, where we'll be discussing important topics such as ocean transparency, equity, and environmental rights in the ASEAN context, as well as legal and policy approaches, as well as advocacy towards marine conservation and ocean governance. A huge topic, I know, but it's very important to talk about these issues as in Southeast Asia, the oceans is central to our climate systems, our livelihoods, economies, culture, and the well-being of coastal communities. And also, these same communities are at the front lines of threats such as overfishing, marine pollution, habitat loss, climate impacts, and weak governance systems. So, for this session, when we speak of ocean equity, we are not only speaking about conservation, but we're talking about accountability, participation, and justice. And this connects directly to Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, which looks at access to information, public participation, and access to justice in environmental matters. Now, before we start with this webinar and our speakers, just a brief backdrop. In ASEAN, we have seen so many important developments over the years, including the recognition of the right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment through the ASEAN Environmental Rights Declaration. But there remains much more work to be done, especially in strengthening environmental rights in the context of our oceans. And these rights could be implemented in a variety of ways, including in fisheries transparency, in marine spatial planning, EIA or environmental impact assessment, or even remedies for affected coastal communities. So today's webinar is very, very timely, not just because we had just celebrated World Oceans Day a couple of days ago, so happy World Oceans Day in June 8th, but because ASEAN is developing the ASEAN Regional Plan of Action on Environmental Rights, as well as the ASEAN Strategic Plan on the Environment, where ocean governance and ocean equity can come in. We are also holding this discussion ahead of the Our Ocean Conference in Mombasa, Kenya, happening next week, where world leaders will be discussing the pathways forward in global ocean governance. So first off, again, this webinar is brought to you by REL, along with the Environmental Justice Foundation, EJF, the Indonesia Ocean Justice Initiative, EOG, and Oceana Philippines International. This webinar will run over the next hour and a half, and we will hear from three fantastic speakers, followed by a moderated discussion. But as the speakers go through their presentations, please feel free to submit your questions anytime to the chats or to Q&A box below in your screen, and we'll try to address as many of them during the discussion. So, without further ado, and to help us unpack all these important issues, we are honored to have three speakers from Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia to share their insights with us this afternoon. Our first speaker is Natawut Kasem, or whom we fondly call Nat, the senior campaigner at the Environmental Justice Foundation, or EJF. Now, Nat works with EJF in Thailand and across Southeast Asia to advance environmental justice and human rights. He contributes to EJF's efforts to promote fisheries governance systems that are legal, sustainable, and ethical, enhancing transparency and accountability, and supporting reforms that protect marine ecosystems as well as the rights of vulnerable communities. Nat, we're very pleased to have you, and please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Loki. Thank you for having me. And thank you for your kind words and kind introduction. Again, happy World Ocean Day. I will present the case of Thailand. Please allow me to bring up the presentation. Okay. Again, at Environmental Justice Foundation or EJF, we working across the globe on the ocean justice. as you know, different oceans have different problem, and Southeast Asia, I think we have some kind of the common challenge on illegal fishing and also human rights abuse in seafood supply chains. In Southeast Asia, EGF have been working for over a decade now. We have the physical office in Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and all over the ASEAN in terms of the satellite operation that we have been working um, we from our work, we see is clearly that is quite challenged in terms of the human rights abuse and IUU that have been happening worldwide. That why we try to bring the initiative of the work to keep up with the challenge that we have. I think the transparency at EJF we consider is at a global emissions because only the transparency can bring the wrongdoer, bring them to the accountability, and the marine environmental is very crucial for us. Looking at the scale, I think just as you can see now on the screen, I think it's quite common challenge in terms of the physical abuse and also environmental abuse that have been happened behind the shadow without the transparency. That's why now I think that transparency is not a choice anymore. It is the necessity that we should be equip them with all of the oceans governance or oceans policy that we are trying to promote across the Southeast Asian. That's why EGF as a part of the coalition of fishery transparency that we try to promote the global charter for fishery transparency. It is a key set of the policy 10 principle that have been designed to address the common challenge that I have just addressed. From the experience of implementation in Thailand, I think that the fishery transparency is low cost or even no cost in some principle, and they can bring a high impact to this challenging world of the fishery transparency to address the justice at sea. And moving to just zoom out a bit at the global level, I would say that we are not alone in terms of facing this challenge and also working on the solution. For example, we have, for just recap just over a past few years, we have a number of the states that joining it and bring the transparency in terms of to become one of that priority. We have South Korea, Canada, Cameroon, Senior Minister, the UK, France, OECD, Kenya, Angola, Benin, Cameroon, Republic of Cameroon, and so on and so forth. And just recently, just last few weeks, we also had the G7 that joining in terms of promoting the transparency in the fishery policy. Again, I would like to highlight again that this is not we are not standalone, but it is the global emission and kind of the common consensus that we can working together in terms of being the transparency to the ocean. And if I may allow, I just want to highlight South Korea that recently have promoted the Blue Action Plans that have one of indicator, one of the action in terms of the implementation of the global charter for fishery transparency as a part of this blue plans. So, from my perspective, I think ocean transparency become the defense of the future of the 21st century of the blue leadership. country in Southeast Asia and everywhere in the world, they try to making the living out of the seafood, but without the transparency, without the justice at sea, I think that it's really challenge. So I would I would invite the nation to looking at the South Korea as one of the example that the low cost or no cost of the fishery transparency, the one that can make you at the front, at the leadership of the world in terms of the just seafoods. Now, I would like to zoom in terms of the case study of Thailand. Thailand have a really challenge and really interesting of the journey, both of the fishery perspective and also the labor as well. It's up and downhill for over a past decade. But with transparency, I think that now we see at the light at the end of the tunnel. Looking just only that the global supply chains that Thailand have integrated with, I think half of Thailand seafood export is linked with the global supply chain that have the high standard of the global or labor uh, preconditioning of the importing. Not just only that, Thailand just has the one of the really top tuna export without just have their own long line. So Thailand reliable on the material that coming in from the counterparts. So the supply chain is pretty crucial in terms of having the transparency to the complexity of the transparency. And if we're looking at the country that Thailand become the counterpart of in terms of the seafood, you can see that the customer and the market state is now increasingly demand the seafood that's free from the hidden abuse and environmental abuse at sea. So I would say that for looking at the case of Thailand, it's clearly that it's really important that you have to make sure that your seafood policy is in line with the global standard. And this is the quick screenshot of implementation of Thailand fishery governance that already align themselves with the global charter. As you can see, Thailand is pretty much in the process of the implementation 10 of 10 of 10 out of 10 of the global charter. So that as a Thai person, I think this is very encouraging to see that. And I would expect soon that we would be hand in hand to working together for Thai to fully implemented the global charter. And one of the area that I would like to highlight is the OECD assessments of the roadmap to as a Thailand that on the in the process of the apply themselves on the to become the OECD member. It's clearly that the Goto the guest Thailand help Thailand develop both the economic competitive and competitiveness and also the social justice as well. So I would end at that. And if anyone is interested to learn more about the Thailand case study in the global charter officially transparency, please visit at the website and then you can learn more what I have been present just now. And thank you for having me. I
Thank
return
you
the
so
mic to
much, Matt.
Lucky.
That's great. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation where we looked at, the linkages of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and its impact on human rights, looking at the scale. It's not just, an environmental issue, but it's also governance, human rights, and environmental justice issue. And Nat mentioned a couple of key initiatives First one being the Global Charter for Fisheries Transparency, that is gaining a lot of traction. And just to emphasize, what you said, Nat, that fisheries transparency is a cost-effective tool for ocean equity, for ocean governance, in line with the need to have access to information, which is really important to ensure accountability as we govern our oceans. So thank you for flagging all these developments, and we're looking forward to the traction that's been gaining and how we can also help with that and how to align and measure up to this global standard. So again, that was Nat from EJF, Thailand, and we now proceed with our second speaker, Nika Okias, who is the campaign lead at Oceana, Philippines. So Nika is an environmental lawyer and advocate, and at Oceana, she leads campaigns to advance fisheries transparency as well as marine conservation. She led Oceana's successful campaign to designate Panaon Island in southern Leyte province as a protected seascape, and now leads efforts to promote fisheries transparency through vessel monitoring measures in the Philippines. So, Nika, we are very pleased to have you, and over to you.
Thank you, Rocky. Let me just confirm if my screen is showing.
Yes, see it. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, thank you very much to the organizers, especially to Ariel, for inviting Ocean and for giving us this space to share about our transparency campaign here in the Philippines. Um, so basically, just a brief introduction of our organization. We are an international advocacy organization that focuses solely on ocean conservation. So the campaigns that we have run around the world are all geared towards one goal: rebuilding ocean fisheries abundance. So in the Philippines, at least for this year, we are running 5 campaigns, all for the goal of rebuilding the fisheries abundance in the Philippines. The campaign that I am handling and I want to share with you is our campaign to protect municipal waters and our transparency campaign. So this campaign centers on ending industrial fishing within, or commercial fishing as we call it here, inside the 15-kilometer municipal water zone. So this is an area that is reserved by law for artisanal fishers, and they're given preferential access within this area. So related to this campaign of protecting this zone is our transparency campaign. This is actually one of the pioneer campaigns here in the Philippines since Oceana established office in the Philippines, and also one of the most difficult, as we all know. And the table that the graph that I'm showing on screen is actually a data that looks into how we are faring in terms of our capture fisheries. So that's fisheries coming from the municipal, the commercial. So capture fisheries is really declining in the Philippines, and I think not just in the Philippines. This map this is a study conducted way back in 2017, showing that those shaded parts, as you can see, the red and the yellow shaded parts are the traditional fishing grounds in the country, and almost all of our fishing grounds are overfished. So this data was gathered in 2017, but experts are saying that the situation now is even worse. There's no recovery data done yet, but the statistics would show that still fisheries is really in decline. And the culprit being we're claiming that it's really illegal fishing. It's still happening in the country, and it's still a serious problem. So way back in 2015, we know that illegal unreported fishing is the culprit. So, but we needed a way to demonstrate that this is really happening, particularly, industrial fishing within municipal waters. So we needed a way to show to the people that this is really happening within our backyard. So luckily, we discovered that there's now this satellite technology capable of detecting commercial grade night lights. So we are able to monitor and visualize industrial fishing, apparent industrial fishing, and where are they happening. So over the years since 2017 until now, 2026, so we are able to detect instances, approximately 270,000 instances of apparent illegal fishing activity within municipal waters that are meant to be protected for the small scale fishers. So in our platform in Karagatan Patrol, you can only see dots. So we feed those information to enforcement agencies like the Maritime Police, the Philippine Coast Guard, to somehow guide them in their operation. So we feed some information and they go on the ground. So this video shows one instance. So as you can see on the top left, these are the lights detected via satellite. And when the Maritime Police went to the ground to verify, this is what they saw. Illegal commercial fishing within municipal waters using super lights. So that is illegal under Philippine law. So aside from feeding these kinds of information to enforcement agencies, the Karagatan Patrol also somehow helps in checking if fishers are complying with the fisheries management regimes, like for example, closed fishing seasons. So you can see here on the left, this is what it looks like before closed fishing season, and on your left, this is what we see during closed fishing season. So you see the stark contrast on activities before and after, measures have been implemented. So this is one way how satellite data can help. And this is also another way of showing commercial fishing happening even inside national marine protected areas. So with this tool, we are able to highlight areas of concern in some of our national MPAs, and share this important information to regulators so they would know if tighter measures would be needed in those areas. But we also recognize that this VIRS, Karagatan Patrol, also has its own limitations. Number one, it's not really real-time tracking. Number two, the identity of those vessels, the identity of those, we only see dots. So the identity of those fishing vessels remain unknown. And it only detects super lights, or essentially you can only use Karagatan Patrol to detect one form of illegal fishing, like use of super lights within municipal waters, and it has its limitations. And because of these limitations, we always reiterate that VIRS, Karagatan Patrol, should only be viewed as a complementary monitoring tool rather than a standalone enforcement solution. So our push really is for agencies to combine Karagatan Patrol, VIRS, with tools like vessel monitoring measures or vessel monitoring system and other community reporting mechanisms. So from Karagatan Patrol is still being used. We still introduce it to our partner communities, but at the same time, we always stress the importance of vessel monitoring measures or vessel monitoring system. The reason is it addresses all the gaps of the lights of the VIR satellite. It has a real-time tracking feature. It is able to identify fishing vessels, the operators. It enhances navigational safety, and it also optimizes resources. So in terms of enforcement operation, our agents don't go in the open sea blindfolded, we call it. So they have this intelligence information, they know where to go. It saves a lot of our resources, human resources, even fuel, those things. So over the years, the transparency campaign, I would say here in the Philippines has gone a long way. It has steadily evolved over the last several years. Way back in 2018, when we amended our fisheries code, after we received a yellow card warning from the European Union, our legislators really did well in incorporating important transparency provisions under the fisheries code. So under the current version, we now have a specific provision requiring vessel monitoring measures, vessel monitoring system. And non-compliance is illegal. In the follow 2 years after, the Fisheries Bureau of the Philippines issued the implementing rules and regulations to implement vessel monitoring. So it outlined how data sharing should be done, but we also want to highlight that while vessel monitoring has been institutionalized under the law, there are also limitations. Number one is that the sharing of data from vessel monitoring is not public sharing is not really allowed because it's considered as sensitive technical information. But despite this, the law allows for some allowance. So authorized sharing to enforcement agencies is permitted. So in 2024, the Fisheries Bureau also shared that 90% of commercial fishing vessels in the Philippines have already installed transponders. So meaning they can already track commercial fishing vessels. So now this year in 2026, the goal really is to get those vessel monitoring data shared across agencies and not just within the Fisheries Bureau, mainly because enforcement, especially fighting illegal fishing, needs concerted effort, not just from one agency. So our goal is really to get those information to authorized agencies, so they can help each other and they can be on the same page. So we recognize that despite this high percentage of installation being done, that's really good, but installation is not really enough. Vessel monitoring only works when data is shared transparently and of course in real time. With this, authorities can stop violations as they happen. So in the Philippines, we already have this monitoring centers. We have one national fisheries monitoring center located here in Metro Manila and 15 other regional monitoring centers. So every region, they can feed information to those agencies, to those local government units leading, especially in those hotspot areas where we detect high intrusions within municipal waters. So commercial fishing, the demand for data sharing is really critical, especially now. For the past months, we have detected that in the month of March alone, Oceana's Karagatan Patrol detected about 3,853 instances of apparent intrusions within municipal waters. So that's really a record high since 5 years. So with this scale, this is why real-time VMM data sharing with authorized agencies is critical, and why we should, it is important that the agency should show how it has been used, if it is used, how has it helped enforcement and prosecution. So this somehow would make public, would validate that public investment put for those transponders, for the public to validate that the money that they are giving for these kinds of technologies really working and helping rebuild the fisheries in the Philippines. So, but aside from that, the world is not perfect. but if you're open uh, to these kinds of information, or legislators or agencies or NGOs are also able to identify what more can be done to strengthen the current system. So real-time data really is critical. I can't stress this any further. It puts every agency, if the Fisheries Bureau would be able to share in real time this VMM data to the Philippine Coast Guard, to the Maritime Police, the National Maritime Center, to protected area offices. It puts these agencies mandated to enforce the fisheries code uh, the to protect the marine environment. It will be able to put them on the same page, coordinating seamlessly to stop illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. So transparency is key. The vessel monitoring requirement aligns with Principle 5 of the Global Charter for Fisheries Transparency. It is happening, and it is happening here in the Philippines, but still there's still room for improvement, more to be done to really maximize the potential of this kind of technology. So the data is here. What we need now is really just the will to really maximize its potential. Thank you very much. That ends my presentation.
Great. Thank you. Another great presentation from Nika, from Oceana in the Philippines. And also thank you for sharing your campaign in the country and the linkages of transparency and protecting municipal waters. Very interesting. A lot of good, illustrations on the data showing it all. Fisheries, capture fisheries in declines, overfish fishing grounds. But again, what's important is we have the tools that are in place and that could be implemented to really abate all these threats that are happening. And that includes night lights. You mentioned VEERS night lights, as well as vessel monitoring measures, VMM, or vessel monitoring systems. It's really interesting, Nico, what you showed, before and after, and you think that could be mainstream as a very cost-effective way of seeing how enforcement could be done and how potential violations could be abated in our oceans. So again, just highlighting what you said, real-time data sharing is critical to combat illegal fishing. It's about time we talk about these measures, and it's all about an implementation and accountability and the ability of our regulators as well as potentially communities to use this information for enforcement and prosecution. So again, thank you very much, Nika, for that presentation. I see a number of questions in our chat box here. Please keep them coming. We will have time to have a discussion later on all these issues. So please go ahead. Thank you very much. And we'll now proceed to our third and last speaker, Stephanie Joanna, whom we fondly call Steffi, who is the co-founder and director of the Indonesia Ocean Justice Initiative. So Steffi in EOG leads and oversees programs on the protection of marine and coastal ecosystems, blue foods, small-scale fisheries, carbon projects, and environmental law reform. In this capacity, she collaborates with government and on drafting regulations, addressing policies, and implementing capacity building programs. Steffi previously served also as legal counsel at the Presidential Task Force to combat illegal fishing in Indonesia. So, Steffi, we're very honored to have you here with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rocky. Hello, everyone. I love being the last speaker in the discussion. So, because all the other speakers have already provided very, very amazing examples. And I think my part is only to conclude and to highlight the great things that the first and second speakers have already presented. But let me share my screen for the presentation. I hope it is showing. Yes. So I think what I'm going to do as the last speaker is to talk about the connection between transparency and ocean equity, because we have heard from all the speakers about the great examples how transparency can bring successes in fisheries management. But also, I think it is important to consider transparency as a pathway to ocean equity. And when we talk about ocean equity, we often also talked about ocean justice. Well, so basically, ocean equity talks about mainly fair distribution of benefits and also the burdens that we are experiencing, and also fair access to participation and everything around that. But when we talked about ocean justice, it is defined as something broader than that, because we also talked about human rights. We also talked about the systemic injustices. We also talked about inequalities that are beyond distribution and also recognition and procedural. We also talked about um, how marginalized communities become the victims of injustices. So, ocean justice or blue justice. So, it highlights the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of managing marine resources, and the core principles are ensuring fair access, meaningful participation, equitable distribution of benefits for coastal communities, and particularly small scale fishers and women who are among the most dependent on the ocean, and basically making sure that their human rights are protected. And this concept of ocean justice or blue justice, it emerged as I would say, as a critic to the concept of blue economy, because we often interpreted the term blue economy very narrowly, like very focusing only on the economic aspect of blue economy, like the economic value of the ocean. So it becomes a driver of economic growth. And then we tend to overlook the justice part of and the impacts of the injustices that becomes the impacts of blue economy that only focused on the economic part, or the role of the ocean to gain economic growth. Okay, next slide. So I think that concept, the very narrow concept of blue economy, can also be seen by several definitions that we often see. For example, the World Bank, it used to define blue economy as a sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth. And also the European Commission, it defines blue economy as economic activities related to the ocean. And OECD also defined blue economy as economic activities of ocean-based industries. And UNDP, it defined blue economy as an approach to put forward to take into account the health of the oceans and seas as we strive the balance of three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. So we can see that in the development of this concept of blue economy, we are already in the stage that we acknowledge that to sustain this blue economy, to sustain the benefits from the ocean, we also have to think about the sustainability aspect of these ecosystems. So we have to maintain between the use and protect. But sometimes, even if we focus on the protection part, we sometimes overlook the justice part or the equity part. Like, for example, we have a lot of MPAs. For us in Indonesia, we also have a lot of MPAs. But most of the times, and this is happening around the world, the MPAs are determined through a very top-down mechanism. So it often also considered as ocean grabbing, because the ones who are actually uh, utilizing those ecosystems for their livelihoods, the ocean dependent people that actually lives there, are oftentimes being excluded in the decision making process in determining that MPA zone. So it also sometimes the protection aspect, the protection efforts that we are doing, that might also be one of the things that are causing injustices. So that's why it is very important to also concentrate on the justice part when we talked about protection and also sustainable use of the ocean. And these are some of the examples of the blue economy policies in several countries. For example, we see Seychelles. So their policy is to position the ocean as a space for development to drive economic growth through exploration and resource exploitation. Well, we know that the impact is that most of the tuna fisheries in their waters are dominated by youth fleets and marginalizing small-scale fishers from the country. And also in South Africa as well, their blue economy policy, one of them include investment in ports, offshore oil and gas extraction, and seabed mining. And the impact is that it creates worse climate change impacts. So extreme climate that are causing droughts and also land grabbing affecting coastal communities in the Wild Coast. And we see other examples in other countries as well. And when we talk about injustices in blue growth the in in the conversation of how blue economy can also impact in blue injustices, we often talk about these 10 kind of injustices. So disposition, displacement, and ocean grabbing. And one of them is the one that the example about MPA that I told you about. And the second one is around environmental justice that concerns pollution and also waste, and also environmental degradation and reduction of ecosystem services, livelihood impacts for small-scale fishers, lost access of marine resources needed for food security and well-being, inequitable distribution of economic benefits, social and cultural impacts, marginalization of women, human and indigenous rights abuses, and exclusion from governance. So why equity is very important? Well, for us, the first one, Indonesia, is very obvious because equity is a constitutional obligation in Indonesia. Like we have this provision in our constitution that says that basically the natural resources that we have are controlled by the state and used for the greatest prosperity of the people. So it's not only there for the economic growth for certain groups. It has for the greatest prosperity of the people. So there has to be an element of equity in managing our natural resources. That's number one, very obvious. And number two, we've seen from examples from so many countries that if we ignore equity, it can actually be counterproductive to the goals of the blue economy. So this is the graph that I'm showing is a figure from a report from the High Level Panel for Sustainable Ocean Economy. And it shows how when countries are neglecting equity, they will also face worse health problem and social problems. So when they are neglecting equity, they will see worsen poverty, for example. Unemployment can be a very big problem too, and also health problems can be a very big problem. And so what are the costs that the country has to bear because of that? They will need to have a bigger cost to actually address those problems. They will have to have a bigger health costs and also costs that are related to the social problems, for example, poverty, that are caused by policies that are neglecting equity. So if we have a concept of blue economy, if we are pushing for blue growth, but at the same time we ignore equity, it can be said that we cannot actually achieve the goal of the blue economy itself. Because although we are receiving so much gain from the exploitation that we are reflecting from the policies of blue economy, at the same time, we will also be bearing a lot of costs that are related to the impacts, the health and social impacts from that kind of policies. And the pictures that I'm showing on the left is the pictures of the human rights abuse victims on at sea. So basically, these are the fishing crews, the Indonesian fishing crews that are experiencing human rights abuses at sea. And it was a very big problem in Indonesia. It is still a very big problem in Indonesia. And if we want to achieve blue economy, these human rights violations can be something that can actually hinder the goal of the blue economy itself. Okay. And then the third one, equity is very important because equitable procedures can support Indonesia sustainability objectives. So if we can make sure procedural justice, if we can make sure more meaningful participation of the marginalized communities, for example, it can actually support Indonesia in meeting our sustainability objectives. Because, for example, there has been studies and also great examples showing how protection efforts or conservation efforts are more effective if they are managed by the local community instead of the government. And most of the times, these great practices come from indigenous practices. So, for example, the Washington Post once recognized the Kajang tribe in Indonesia as the world's best tropical forest guardians, and it is considered as the best forest management and conservation in the world because they are actually managed by these indigenous people and by acknowledging these indigenous practices. And there are a lot of other examples and studies as well that are saying that indigenous people have contributed significantly to reducing the planetary pressures. So if we recognize their rights in terms of giving them access, in terms of giving them the procedural, making sure of their procedural justice, making sure that they are involved in decision-making processes, and and also to nurture their great practices, I think it will also be resulting to a very positive impact in terms of meeting the country's sustainability objectives. So, what are the modalities that Indonesia have right now? We have a lot of modalities in Indonesia. So I try to break down the elements of blue justice. Uh, from the top one is the human rights, and then the to the bottom one around the protection of critical natural capital. And if we see our laws and regulations in Indonesia, there are a lot of provisions that can actually be deemed as a good modalities in achieving blue justice in Indonesia. And then next slide. So, but what is missing from our current legal framework? So when we talk about justice, we often talked about these three kinds of justices: the recognitional, the procedural, and also the distributional justice. The first one is the recognitional justice. So what is still missing? I think one of them in the fisheries sector in Indonesia, what is missing in our recognitional justice aspect is that the lack of women recognition in fisheries are often sometimes that is deemed as a big problem in fisheries management in Indonesia. And also the second one, when we talk about distributive justice, the access of the marine space for the small scale fishers and also the ocean dependent people can is still a big problem in Indonesia as well. And also we go to the third one, which is the procedural justice. All these justices, the ones that I mentioned before, the recognitional, the distributional, it all they are connected to one another, and their relation are also depending to uh how we promote procedural justice as well. And when we talked about procedural justice, we often talk about public participation because one of the elements of procedural justice is public participation. And what is still happening right now, I think, is not only in Indonesia, but I think it's also a global phenomenon as well. Sometimes participation is only understood as like a communication, a one-way communication. Sometimes it is not meaningful. So if you see the public participation ladder on the left by Arnstein in 1969, most of the time the public participation that are held by the government are still in the very bottom stage, either a manipulation or like an just like informing an information. So it should be deemed as a non-participation, because what the kind of public participation, a meaningful public participation that we want to achieve, is the one where the local communities can actually have influence in decision-making processes. So when we want to understand the dimensions of justice in ocean governments, we have to think of the where, the why, who, what, when, and how, to then consider whether these policies are equity blind or equity activating. Now, let's talk about transparency. So this is the status of transparency in Indonesia. We did taking stock with the Fisheries Transparency Initiative back in 2023 to 2024 in Indonesia. And apparently, 25% of the transparency element that we have in Indonesia are still in a very bad status. It is either no public access or no data produced by the government. And it shows how procedural justice is still a big problem in Indonesia in terms of fisheries management, because there are still several information that should be transparent, that should be available for the public, but are still not available, being made available by the government. And I think this is my last slide. So when we want to promote transparency and we want to promote ocean equity, we see that there are a lot of enabling conditions that can also affect these efforts, right? We have identified 10 main governance elements that also should be addressed: civil liberties, open government, fundamental rights, rule of law, political stability, absence of corruption, government effectiveness, constraints on government power, regulatory quality enforcement, and also political culture. So most of the times when we talked about transparency, sometimes the problem is not only on whether the data is available or not, or whether we have the platform to actually publish this very information or not. It's also sometimes hindered by these very important governance elements that should also be addressed. Oh, sorry. So this is my last slide. That was not my last slide. Okay, so on my last slide, I just wanted to say that for us to truly implement and truly achieve ocean equity or ocean justice, I think we also have to push for a paradigm shift to move away from weak sustainability to strong sustainability. Because when we are still giving when we are still tolerating extractive industries that are impacting the small scale fishers and the communities for the sake of economic growth, I think the problems around ocean equity will still be a big problem. We cannot achieve the goals of ocean equity if we still have the adoption of the weak sustainability paradigm. Okay, I think that's all that I can say today. I hope that is helpful for you in any way. Thank you.
Very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Steffi from EOG, that was, as always, a very, very insightful presentation. And I think really ties nicely all the presentations that we've had from our panelists on transparency as a means and the pathway towards ocean equity. Over the past years, we have been hearing blue economy being dropped a lot, but not on the other side, on the blue justice and blue ocean justice and blue justice. So it's good that we are starting to discuss this critique to blue economy and that we should ensure that there are safeguards in terms of fair access on meaningful participation of communities, as well as importantly, equitable distribution of benefits towards ocean equity. So again, thank you very much, Steffi, for those practical applications in Indonesia in particular, as well as the enabling conditions that are needed to ensure that can make this a reality. I think these are very important as we go forward. Again, that was a very strong framing in the presentation on transparency and how we link ocean equity in all this conversation. We connect the dots, between transparency, communities, and fairness, and a just ocean governance. So again, thank you very much for that. So at this point, we have heard from three fantastic panelists offering complementary perspectives. We have heard from Nat from Thailand on the Thailand example, Nika in the Philippines on vessel monitoring measures, and also Steffi from Indonesia. We will now proceed to our moderated discussion, and I invite all speakers so they're here, and we have a number of questions also here in the chat box below. So let me just check a few questions here. So first off, there's a question towards I think Nika on the Philippine experience. So the fisheries code here, for example, from the question is from Marius Panahon. Let me just check. From Jonesa Vetia first. So asking Nika on what the current status is on the mandatory implementation of vessel monitoring for commercial fishing in the Philippines and providing a context perhaps to everyone here since there has been court proceedings against the government on the implementation of vessel monitoring. So we'll start with there and we have a couple of follow-up questions as well. So maybe Nika first.
Yes, the vessel monitoring implementation in the Philippines is still on the way. There is no restraining order whatsoever in the Supreme Court, despite that there's a pending case questioning the validity of vessel monitoring in the Philippines. So I think that's clear. The in 2024, there was an attempt to hold the implementation. So there was an order coming from the Office of the President to stop the rollout of the installation of transponders. And then 3 months after that order from the then executive secretary was revoked by the president. So as of now, vessel monitoring is fully implemented or being implemented. Recently, BFAR also is very open in saying that their fisheries monitoring centers are fully operational nationwide. So that's the claim of the agency.
Right. And let me just follow up, Nika, because there are some questions here citing concern on um, cases by the Supreme Court that seem to undermine the preferential access of municipal waters for municipal fisherfolk. So can you share us more on what seems to be the policy directions of the government, considering all these developments for community preferential access of municipal waters?
So, for everyone's information, aside from the pending case on vessel monitoring, so there's another case pending the Supreme Court questioning the preferential right given to artisanal fishers to fish exclusively, quote unquote, within the 15-kilometer zone. So that's what we call the municipal water. So there's a case filed by commercial fishers. As of now, that decision by the Supreme Court is not yet final and executory. So we are still waiting for the resolution of a pending motion for reconsideration for the court to reverse its decision. It's been quite a while, so we are still waiting for the decision by the court. But in the meantime that we're waiting for the court to decide, I think there's during the Senate hearings, it was clearly asked from the Bureau of Fisheries as to the status. So as of now, they are not allowing commercial fishers to fish inside municipal waters. But for the petitioner, the Mercidar Fishing Corporation, who filed that case, uh, there's they are allowed to fish inside that area. So actually, it's we're still fighting that that should not be the interpretation because the case has not yet been finally decided by the court. But there's also that account by BFAR. But anyway, so agent non-government organizations, local government units are really firm in protecting their municipal waters. They don't allow commercial fishing vessels to fish inside their municipal waters. And that should be the interpretation because there's no final decision yet.
So no, we await with bated breath on what comes up, what comes out in the Supreme Court reconsideration. But it's good to see that there are still um we still look at the policy of the government to have preferential access in place. But again, a lot of developments coming in. We'll have to make another webinar, maybe Nika, on like what happens later. But again, thank you for sharing all these updates. So I want to go now to Steffi. There are a number of questions here directed to the Indonesian experience as well. And the first one is, I think, from Sukha from the National Foundation in Indonesia, who's sharing that there is a large number of small-scale fishing fleets in Indonesia, including those who use compressors, which has impacts also to the depletion of fish stocks. So, from an equity perspective, he's asking if are there discussions on social protections for small-scale fisheries. Could you share the current status and advocacy efforts, especially governments, to address the challenges that are faced by small-scale fisheries in Indonesia?
Oh, sorry. I was trying to locate the unmute button. So by social protection, I'm okay. I tried to answer, but hopefully I got the question correctly. So I assume that by social protection, you meant insurance program for the fishers. So if yes, I'll try to answer in the context of the insurance program for the fishers. So yes, Indonesia has some progress around social protection in terms of giving insurance program for the small scale fishers and mainly against accidents at sea or work related risk faced by the fishers. But there are still a lot of gaps. Well, one of the things that can be appreciated is that the government has already tried to subsidize like I think the first year premiums for the insurance for the small scale fisheries to encourage them to actually sign up for insurance against the risk that they are facing while working. But there are still several limitations in the implementations. Well, I think the first one, because mostly the coverage remains limited. And the second one, which is silly because some small scale fishers are not enrolled due to administrative limitations and barriers because some of them are not actually registered as small scale fishers. So they are not considered and eligible to have these insurance program from the government. And why they are not registered as small scale fisheries? It is solely an administrative problem. It is solely because they either they don't know where to register or because they think that it will take up a lot of energy and time to actually go to the office and also to register themselves as small scale fishers. Um, and that is we are seeing because if the registration for the small scale fishers in Asia remain a problem, then we cannot actually know the exact number of small scale fishers that we actually
Mhm.
have Indonesia. So it is very difficult to identify the most appropriate policy uh, for the small scale fishers if we don't actually know the number of the small scale fishers itself. So we are, for EOG, we are also assisting the government in increasing and also improving the registration process of the small scale fishers, because I think that is one of the steps, the one of the very, very basic step to actually protect our small scale fishers, to have them registered as small scale fishers, to know how many fishers that we have in every area, and also to have that data to identify the best solution or the best policy that is the best policy for these small scale fishers. And also around insurance, right now we are trying to advocate for a better insurance program, so a better cooperation between the government and also the private insurance company to have a better coverage, and also to have, for example, in Central Java, the insurance program, the age limit for the insurance program is 65, but
Mhm.
we all know that in Indonesia, we have small scale fishers at the age of 30 and 35. They are still fishing, and they are the ones that can be most vulnerable to the risk of fishing. So they will be the one that need protection the most. So that is also one of the advocacy that we are doing right now, trying to increase the coverage, and also to make sure that the small scale fishers that actually need this kind of protection are are
Right.
eligible to
Yeah.
to have this insurance program. I hope that
Yeah.
answers the question.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think these are very important initiatives, Steffi, that we need to be discussing more about. That there are the existence of these social protections. There, of course, there are, these practical issues that need to be resolved and addressed. But I think with some more tweaking and fine tuning, this can be also addressed in the longer term. But I want to add something more. Another question here that relates also to social small scale fisheries in Indonesia or elsewhere. There might be policies that would be considered unjust or inequitable for small scale fishers. So what has this what then how could you then characterize the relationship between small scale fishers and governments in terms of the overall uh, framework infrastructure? Is it, are there representation and participation issues? Are there meaningful participation channels? How would you, characterize that in Indonesia?
Yes, I think this also relates to Dharma's question, right, in the chat box. Yeah. So, um, yes, the channel of public participation for small scale fishers is still a big problem in Indonesia. So we did a survey back in 2024. We did a survey around whether small scale fishers are being consulted in spatial planning uh,
Mhm.
policies. And in most of the areas that we visited, the small scale fishers have never been invited and consulted in special planning. And it's a very big problem, because the area that are often being deemed as an area for extractive industries are actually blocking the access for the small scale fishers to actually fish and have their source of livelihoods. So public participation is a very big problem. And also, in related to Dharma's question, yes, the quota-based fisheries policy that Indonesia is currently developing, it also requires a lot of consultation with the small scale fishers. But what we are actually seeing in Indonesia right now, a lot of demonstrations against this policy are happening in parts of the world. So small scale fishers are now actually gathering to speak against this policy that they think will not be benefiting for them. And also, they think that these policies are actually developed without any consultations and without any considerations into their interest at all. So, what we are trying to do right now is the first one is the advocacy that we are doing in Central Java. So while we have a lot of programs in Central Java, because most of the small scale fishers in Indonesia are actually located in Central Java. So we start with that very big chunk of Indonesia in Central Java. So back in 2025, we successfully pushed forward this governor regulation that that regulates about the obligation of the local government to do a consultation with small scale fishers for every part of their decision making processes and policy making processes. I know that it does not guarantee anything because being regulated in the regulation is one thing and implementation is another thing, but we think that that might be a good step, like a good first step to actually
Right.
build the foundation. So that's the first thing, the regulation. And then the next thing that we do is that right now we are doing a series of a capacity building for the local government and also the small scale fishers to increase their capacity in public consultations and public participation.
Mhm.
So what we often do is that we do a 3 days training in several parts of Central Java. So on the first day, we do training for the local government. We educate them about the importance of public participation. We educate them about their even constitutional obligation to actually include these communities in decision-making processes. And also we give training on how this consultation and participation should actually be conducted. And then on the second day, we do trainings for the small scale fishers. So basically, we are trying to empower them to have more confidence
Mhm.
in deliberating their concerns and their interests, and then making sure that they are equipped with the knowledge around their rights and also the impacts of some of the policies that can be made by the government. And also on the third day, we do a training that finally combine the local government and also the small scale fishers. So we do some kind of a simulation of public participation. So in that way, I think not only that we try to do a capacity building program, but we also try to create a culture of communication and open communication between the local government and also the small scale fishers. I think that is very important to start with the local government because the local governments are the ones that are closer to the small scale fishers, I mean, compared to the national government. So hopefully, the local government can then be the agents to actually convey the concerns of the small scale fishers to the national government. I hope that answers the question.
I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Steffi. So, I mean, that's very important. You mentioned regulation as well as the capacity actually for local governments and the communities to actually engage. That's really important to ensure meaningful participation. So, yeah, so a comprehensive answer, Steffi. I want to now go to Nat first. So Nat, you mentioned, you reiterated the call for governments to adopt and implement the global charter for fisheries transparency. Very important to provide standards on how transparency should be measured against. So, in your perspective, in Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries, what are the most important elements of that charter that we should look at, really asking government to comply with or to really implement? And how would that be implemented in the ASEAN countries? So if you could share more about, the global fisheries transparency, the challenges, and what we need to do moving forward, especially in this region.
Thank you so much, Loki. From EJF perspective, beyond Thailand as well, I think that include the Indonesia and the Philippines as well. We see the quite the variety of the responsive from the government. It start from very high welcome, for example, like the South Korea that adopt the global charter to their blue action plans. 2030 that quite different from the Indonesia and Philippines that not recognize the global charter in comparison with the Thailand that by the way that they not endorse but they make statement that their policy that fishery governance policy is actually ally quote unquote ally with the global charter. And I think speaking from the experience of Thailand, I think one of the most highlight principle out of the 10 principle on the global charter is the ultimate beneficial owner disclosure. For example, in Thailand, most of the time that because of the new regulation that come with the higher penalty, the tycoon, the ultimate beneficial owner of the vessel will they will try to hide under the
Mm,
shadow by having the nominee to hold the fishing license on behalf of themselves. And whenever the government detect and enforce the penalty to their fishing fleet, they will just basically just get rid of that fishing license and having a new nominee. Hiring the new nominee to apply for the new fishing license. That is have been happening in Thailand, and I believe that is it might even worse when zooming this picture beyond Thailand because of the domestic fishery in Thailand is might not have that benefit cost of benefit when comparing with the huge feed operation of the tuna at the distant water operation feed that again most of the time align with the global seafood supply chains. This is more and more that in line with again with another jurisdiction of the global standard, for example, the OECD, the new the forced labor regulation of the EU, and also the FTA negotiation that Thailand Indonesia having with the EU because of again transparency is very crucial when it's come to the law enforcement to the real people who should be whole on their accountability. I would end my answer that again I don't see anywhere in the world is perfect, but I would very encouraging to see that in the journey to become to that goal that we have the common ambitions together. Lucky.
yeah, yeah, no, great points. I think really important things, Nat, and the challenges I think are also similar to across jurisdictions here, and it will be good to have those standards in place that we can comply with. But it's important to have the buy-in, of course, of governments for that. So we carry on, we push forward. There's a hand raise here from Ricky Siazon. If you want to, you know, uh, you want to speak, if you have any question, please do so. I think we may be able to give you access, or is it a wrong button? Okay, might not be. It must have been like a wrong press. But we have some questions here. Ricky, did you want to say anything? All right. I think might be a wrong press. So I want to ask the three of you panelists. We talked about fisheries transparency in the context of equity, but I want to ask, what are the practical implications specifically for communities as well as civil society organizations, environmental lawyers, public interest lawyers? How can we use transparency tools, vessel monitoring systems, to support communities affected by illegal fishing, for instance. So, what does fisheries transparency practically mean actually to communities? So, how would that look like? So, who would like to go first? Is Nika still here? Okay. Anyone?
Yes, still
Nat
here.
or yeah, Nika, would you like to go first?
Mm. Your question was, what would transparency mean for local communities? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Um, well, I think transparency would give community social justice. I think that's really the goal, even the Constitution. Um, the fact that the Constitution gives artisanal fishers preferential access within that limited portion in the ocean is actually a manifestation that, the Constitution gives primacy to social justice. We should,
Mhm.
the law gives more to those who have less in life. So that's a really famous saying
Mhm.
or quote from our former president. So yeah, transparency would guarantee social equity and justice to local communities, and it would in fact even uh, make life easier. It would uh, giving, guaranteeing transparency, especially enforcement, would uh, materialize the
Right.
objectives of the fisheries code and any other environmental laws that we have here in the Philippines. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my opinion.
Really, really good point, Nika. It's very important. And also, I want to ask, like, Steffi and Nat, how could this information, be used by communities, like in practical terms as well? So maybe, Steph.
Yes, so I think also related to your first question. So basically, transparency, what does that mean for the local community? I think it means two things. It can push forward more equitable policies, uh,
Hmm.
for them to be more involved in the policy making processes. There's a channel for them to actually convey and influence the policy by considering their interests and their concerns. But also, I think the second one is that it can also help enforcement and accountability. So
Hmm.
I think one of the things that, relating to the second one of the things that helped us a lot, the advocacy that we are doing is around illegal fishing, is that some of the illegal fishing violations that we are reporting to the government are actually came from the information from the small scale fishers that we engage with. So they are the ones who actually have the information, and because they don't have the channel to actually report these violations, they come to us, and then we then convey this information to the law enforcement to then be followed up by the law enforcement officers. So if there is a transparent and there is a transparency and there is a channel to actually for the law enforcement officers to have these kind of information around violations and accountability of the business actors, I think it will also benefit the community as well, because the impacts that these violations are resulting is something that is also impacting the livelihoods of the coastal communities. Like, for example, it can result in decreased fish stock, which then the victims will be the coastal communities again. So yeah, I think those.
Yep. I think, yeah, that's great. I mean, meaningful, important for the development of policies as well as accountability in particular. Enforcement would be really important in practical measures. I think we can see that on the ground level, and it's important to be scaled up as well. Nat, would you like to chime in on how it means to communities?
For sure. From my perspective, I think that for the fishery transparency is mean to the local community in a two way. One is where they are basically in the complicated global supply chains, where the policy are, where the positioning of the artisanal fishery, the positioning of those who share their livelihood with the uh, fish livestock, where they are in terms of the sustainability direction, and the second one is about direction of where they want to be. Basically, the way that the government decide fishery governance, it should be heard and it should be consult with the affect community, affect the livelihood, and have the common goal, have the consensus that they want to be and how the direction of the fishery management should be in that relative perspective. Thank you.
Great point. And on that, it really guides us and our governments and everyone, all the stakeholders on, how we go forward in terms of ocean governance. But we need the best available information that we have, and that's available actually in place already. And as one comment from our participant here from Solita says that, it's important as it builds public trust, strengthens accountability, and improves environmental outcomes. And this is like the entirety, the holistic approach of how we want to do things. And we can't do that. We won't be able to do that without transparency or information on hand. So I think that's a great point also from our participant. So we are now reaching the end of our conversation here. It has been a very, very enriching discussion with our panelists from all three countries in ASEAN. So I want to end here by asking each of our panelists, one quick and easy line, one line, where key takeaway you want all the participants to remember from this discussion on ocean equity, on environmental rights, and fisheries transparency. So just one line, one key takeaway that you would like everyone to remember. So I will start with Nat, please.
For me, I think that the open information is really crucial for the healthy ocean. That is.
Thank you. Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Nat. And Nika?
For me, transparency is transparency is important, especially for those who fish honestly and who fish sustainably.
Right. Sustainability, transparency. Thank you. Well said. And again, to close this off, I ask Steffi one closing line. Go ahead.
I think I'll just use the title of my presentation. So, we will not achieve ocean equity without fisheries transparency.
Great. Perfect. And that, I think, perfectly sums up all this conversation. So again, thank you very much to all our speakers. Very fantastic presentations and insights. We had Nat, Nikki, Nika, and Steffi. And thank you everyone also for all the participants who joined us today and all your questions and enthusiasm and interests on this topic. So as we continue to move forward with regional work and national work to develop ocean governance, we hope that transparency and equity will be placed at the center of all this discussion and ensure that we have ocean equity and governance in place. So, on behalf again of Ariel and our co organizers, EJF, EOG, and Oceana Philippines, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Again, this has been Rocky Guzman from Ariel. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat, and we wish everyone a good day, good evening ahead. All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rocky. Thank you, everyone.